So the first steps really in flint knapping that I stress to people that they need to learn is removing a proper flake from a stone spall, turn it into some sort of projectile point. Once you understand how the stone works and how you can pop one of those flakes off, get that clean flake, turn it into a projectile point, the rest of flint knapping and all of the processes involved really just kind of seem to fall in a systematic process all the way to the very end. Any stone spall, whether it's a piece of obsidian, a piece of Georgetown chert, Keokuk, dacite, you name it, you have to be able to remove a single flake off of that spall to produce a projectile point. Now if you're looking to produce some sort of adze or axe or large blade or large knife or spear point, you're going to work through the entire spall. For this, we're looking to pop off a couple good clean flakes that we can use as a simple atlatl dart point or even an arrowhead. We have a leg pad, we have some form of hard hammer percussion, and then we have our spall. Now with this, what I'm always looking to do is find spots where I can remove flakes from an edge into the middle, like this flake scar you see here. One piece of stone was removed from here all the way to here, collecting a little of the cortex as it traveled from this end of the stone to this end of the stone. But I'm looking to pop off good clean flakes, something like this here. How I look for those are establishing the center line of my stone. There's that line that cuts right through the middle. Think of this as a piece of bread, and there's nothing but peanut butter in between. That peanut butter is that line. And I want to remove the bread on the top, and I want to remove the bread on the bottom. So I'm looking to strike areas known as platforms that are below that peanut butter. They sit as that bread below the peanut butter. But I'm looking to make contact right where this cortex starts to rise up. So right about here, that's going to give me a good little flake. Broke off on the back end, a lot of cortex on it. This would work. Nice big flake there. Definitely a tool as it is, as a simple blade. I've got my bulbar percussion down on this end, which is my proximal end, and then my distal end is the end that tapers out into that real sharp edge. That right there is a decent little arrowhead flake. Another good flake. Little cortex on the top, not too thick. This would definitely give me a good little point, little projectile. This flake right here is a little thick. It's going to require some different percussion techniques, but this is still a good projectile flake. There you go. This flake right here, this is another good larger kind of atlatl or even arrowhead. I got a little bit more mass on it. We're looking good. Alright, so in the process of removing those initial flakes and then removing all these smaller subsequent flakes, pretty much worked myself into a little biface. It's got a rough shape. I can turn this into any number of larger projectiles or even a tool. But again, the focus, these are the flakes I want to remove to turn into any number of projectile points. So out of these flakes, I kind of like these two the best. This one has no cortex on it. It's a little bit thinner. It's got a little bit of a bend to it. It's not a big deal. You can nap that out. This one has a little bit more of a simple profile. I can see the edges all the way around. It has a little cortex right here at the end, but not much. I can definitely pressure flake that out. More importantly, I can take these flakes in between my fingers and I can't snap them. If I can snap a flake, and I'm not talking about the edges, I'm talking about if I can't snap that flake in my hand, I know it's going to hold up underneath the pressure of pressure flaking. Now you have different options when it comes to pressure flaking. There's a variety of copper flakers and there's a variety of antler tines. I'm going to use both to give you an idea how they both work. The fundamentals are pretty much the same. Copper is going to last longer. These will wear down, but you do have some longevity out of your antler tines. Now for pressure flaking, I like to keep some pretty simple soft pads. Soft pads are pads that you can roll and manipulate in your hands. Harder pads, something like these pieces of rubber here, they typically start out like this, and then over time they wind up looking like this. This is kind of an in-between. It's got a little channel. It still allows me to manipulate. The problem with manipulating stone and something soft is your hand has contours. You can actually cause breaks in the stone while pressure flaking. The first step that I do is always abrade the edges, and I'm looking to just, again, reinforce my edges, but more importantly, break off any of the shine. And the shine is when you hold a flake up to the light, you can see through the edge. I want to remove that shine, that portion that I can see through. It's translucent and I can definitely see light coming through it. I want to remove that so I can give myself the strongest edge possible. Alright, now that I know that my flake has a sharp edge, but I can definitely run my finger across it, I want to kind of get a general idea and plan out where my projectile point is. Sometimes we automatically think that we want this distal end or this thinner end to be the point. We actually want to reverse that point. We want to make this thicker end actually be the point of our projectile. This is that proximal end. So when I removed it, this end was closest to me, my proximity. This was at distance. This is the distal end. The reason why I want to do this, it just makes it easier to haft in a thinner end than it is on a thicker end. You can see the difference right there. Way thicker and much thinner. It's going to be way easier to haft in an arrow if I use this actual distal end. After establishing a general layout, I'm just going to go around and try and make my flake as level as possible and remove some of this larger mass. Take the flake in my hand and I hold it with my fingers. I don't squeeze with my fingers. That can cause your flake to break once it's under pressure. We'll start with an antler tine, and all I'm looking to do is go all the way around the edge, just popping flakes in one direction. The direction is this flat side here. And what this is allowing me to do is raise my edge. You can see just by going a few flakes here, my edge was once down here and I've raised it up. You can see the difference in it. See how it's a little bit higher than this portion over here? That's where I'm raising my edge. And why I'm raising my edges, I'm trying to get to all of this mass on the top. Because when I'm closest to the top, when I'm closest to that top piece of bread, I'm raising my edge so I can remove the flakes across here, ultimately thinning out my point. I'm not too worried about this side. This side is relatively flat. It is a little curved, but I'm going to do those same steps to get that same result. I'm taking my pressure flaker, I'm putting it on the actual edge so it sits like this. Right on there, and I'm pushing in with my right hand and then popping the flakes into my hand pad. I push in, down, in, down, in, down, the whole way. Now once I got to this corner, I popped the flake off, and then I'm going to work on this piece right here. And what happened is, when I popped that flake off, I removed this chunk. Now I have a new platform to come this direction to get this chunk off, and I'm going to alternate each and every single time from one side to the other side to get this mass off. Put it right on that edge, pop. That's the flake that I popped off. You can see the cortex on it. You can see the flake scar where it shot up and met that ridge line. Now I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to attack it this side right here, that little point. Same exact thing. There. Remove that chunk. I'm going to do this back and forth the whole way. I'm pushing my flaker into that point, and I'm using my legs kind of squeezing together to pop that actual flake off. There's that flake scar right there. I've gone through, I removed that flat wall of cortex that you saw before, and now I have a new working edge. And what I'm doing is, I'm trying to match my center line, this edge right here, with this one. So as I look at it, I can see how it's bending this way. Now in order to bring this edge up, I need to take these flakes and drive them down. So the downside goes in the hand, and I just start popping the flakes off. I've gone through and I've removed mass on this side. You can see a little bit of that flake scar. But if I keep going the entire way, I'm I'm gonna make these ends even higher. I'm gonna stop before I get to this point. As I'm flaking all of this inside, but this is higher. This spot right here is already higher. I'm gonna flip this over. And do this side down here because it was the opposing side. Now I've taken this guy and I've made it a degree straighter. I'm going to do that same process again to get these sides to match the middle as far as its straightness. Alright, so I've now made this edge nice and straight. This gives me the opportunity to really look at where the mass is on this possible projectile point to really turn it into a final shape. I can see that this area up in here is going to be my pointed end. This is going to be my hafting area. Flake feels strong. Now it really comes down to shaping it. Now let's go to some copper. I know a lot of folks use copper, and this is a good point to kind of get into there. Copper is going to allow me to help shape this projectile point just like I would if I was using antler. I'm always abrading edges. Sharp edges will crush under pressure. Braided edges will remove flakes. That flake right there went from my edge all the way to my center line. I'm going to try and pop the majority of this mass off up at the front just to thin it out. There we go. Take another nice big chunk out of there. Still getting thinner. I'm pushing into the edge and then down. That one almost went up and over. Now once I've removed the stone from this kind of front side, because that's my thickest portion, I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to braid down, and I'm going to go for the opposite side. Now you can see, if you remember how thick it was before, mass on this side, mass on this side. Just by 2 passes, I've thinned this out. I'm probably going to start doing some of these lateral sides until I get a little bit smaller point, and then I'll remove more mass. Now to throw the long flakes, one thing you have to do, I call it getting up on the stone. And you'll kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm going to work this edge this way. I'm rising up into my seat and I'm putting the back of my hand on the back of my leg. This is mass, this is leverage, and I'm putting my flaker kind of into my gut, into the back of my leg, or working with my hand. And I'm working all this in conjunction by pushing in as hard as I can into the edge of the stone and then popping that flake off. Put my flaker right on this edge. I push in and over. And that flake went from there to there. Kind of got caught up on this little bit of mass, but we're going to clear that out. Moving over a little bit, and it shot straight across. So this right here is essentially that first pass. You can kind of see it's already starting to thin out. This is definitely where most of my mass is. And this is going to be that flatter side. So I'm just going to continue that process of napping one side, abrading, flipping it over, and targeting this side. Flip it over until I get to a relatively rough shape of a point that I can finalize and get it rocking and rolling. Alright, switch back to some antler. Should it make a difference? It typically doesn't. Nice long flakes. So that flake I just popped with this antler tie went from this edge right here all the way to almost the opposite side. So whether it's copper, whether it's an antler, you can't achieve the same results. It's just how you pressure flake, how you go about holding your antler tine. I hold it in my hand like this and push in. flake. Start to take a rough shape. I always call this, learn some conditioning flakes. They're lightly shaping, popping flakes still. You still hear them popping. It also gives me an opportunity to really look at the edge because I want to make sure I can get this guy as flat and as straight as possible. Still applying every single time to the edge, pushing in and then down. Let's go back to some copper. We're almost at a rough shape. It's getting thin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to address this backside and then address my tip. For this, to get my backside, all I'm going to do is I'm going to see where this corner is over here. I'm going to make it mirror this one. So I'm just coming in, popping flakes down. I'm not removing too much mass from this corner side and really focusing on the mass on the opposite side. Flipping it over, doing the exact same thing. But instead of starting at the corner, I'm going to come back in a little bit to the midpoint, pop those flakes, flip it back over, give myself a little abrasion, back to that midpoint, flip it over, let's go around, should be pretty level. Just like that, by going back and forth, opposite sides, I flatten my bottom. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my tip and give myself my rough shape. Alright, and there is the rough shape of my projectile point. Still going to make it a little bit thinner, put a hafting mechanism on there, but I've got it pretty much evened out, equaled out. It's not as curved, got a little bit of mass right up on top, but this is where I'm going to go through, do some final thinning to get it into shape, put some notches in there, and we'll be good to go. Let's go back to antler. Just about there. Nice little arrow point, good profile to it. We'll throw some side notches in there. Be good to go. I like using antler for most of my work. Just slows you down. You're not in a rush at that point. Nice and easy. Put a few little last adjustments on there. And what you have is one projectile point. No issues on this guy. The key things to remember when it comes to being able to pop off a flake like this, turn it into a point like this, is you don't want to be able to see in the middle of it. You're probably going to get some shine around the edges. That's fine. Remove that with an abrader and start working on your rough shape. The goal in that flint napping is to be able to pop a flake off, turn it into a projectile point. This is already a tool in itself, but let's take it one step farther and go to this tool. So really when it comes to flint napping, the first step's the easiest steps. Finding that ball, popping those flakes, turning that flake into a little projectile point. If you can do this in the sense that you can consistently pop off flakes, turn them into projectile points, some will break, they always do, but if you can produce tools like this, you're well on your way to progressing into higher level flint napping as far as large axes and knives and clovis points and all various styles of points and projectiles throughout history, more importantly the tools throughout history. But it all starts with making a simple arrowhead from a stone flake that came from a spall. You'll be good to go. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And yeah, we'll see you in the bush.